Hello, and welcome to our first episode of Embracing Cultures.
This year marks the 60th anniversary of the establishment of Sino-French diplomatic relations. And for this episode of program, we will delve into the rich heritage and intricate connections that have woven together the narratives of China and France over centuries.
From shared philosophical underpinnings to artistic inspirations, from culinary delights to shared linguistic influences, our dialogue will tie together the threads that bind both China and France, and we'll look at how both societies, through mutual exchange, have come to shape each other. Today we are joined by two guests who both have very deep roots with both China and France. Christine Cayol, French writer and Beijing-based exhibition curator.
And also the famous cellist, Mr. Chu Yi-Bing. Thanks for joining us. Mr. Chu, you were born in China and you were the first Chinese student to be admitted to the Paris National Superior Conservatory of Music. You were studying under the Great Master?
My French professor's name was Maurice Randon, great cellist, great musician, great artist.
Because you travel back and forth from China and Europe and in France, and you are familiar with both cultures. And if you were to use three keywords to describe China and France, what would those words be?
Merci. Merci? Really? Merci. Excusez-moi. Et au revoir.
Okay, so would you care to elaborate on it?
It's not only three simple words. There are three great signs of modern human civilization.
Okay, how about China? Three keywords.
古老肉，爆炒腰花，葱油饼。
So it's all about food.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so why these three dishes?
It's all my three favorite dishes. Yeah, I come back in Beijing. I'm living now in Los Angeles, United States. I'm coming Beijing for concert, for family, and for these three dishes.
Okay, so like music, food is also universal language.
It's called in Chinese, 精神食粮. It's spiritual food. In Chinese, we call it.
Okay.
I'm so happy to hear that you love 古老肉.
Oh,
because I love this food.
Yeah.
Too. This is one of my favorite food.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult question, just to choose three words to describe my personal experience of China and my own country. So I try to do my best in a very spontaneous way, let's say. About China, I would say three words. Like I would say movement. To be always on the move and always changing, and you have to adapt yourself to any kind of situation. I would say energy. This kind of energies I feel when I come to China, when I am living in Beijing, energy. And I would say sharing good moments with people. It means maybe gastronomy and art of life, and very friendly way of sharing moments. About France, I would say art. I would say south of France, French Riviera, because I love this Provence, and it's very important to my eyes. And I would say people, people-to-people relationship.
Mm-hmm. It's a very good summary. How long have you been working and living here in Beijing?
I've been living in Beijing nearly for more than 20 years.
Is it longer than you, Eric?
I've been 18, so yeah, it's longer.
Okay, so
longer.
Yeah.
I'm about 22 years here.
Okay, so what is your favorite leisure activity here?
My favorite leisure activity is to go to a Beijing garden and to have a stroll in
Park? You mean parks?
Yeah, the park. Jingshan Gongyuan, Beihai. This kind of park, and close to my house there is a small park where there is a lot of people from the neighborhood just going strolling in a very quiet way, playing mahjong, dancing, just have tai chi chuan. I like this way of very, very relaxing way of enjoying time and environment. So this is why really one of my favorite leisure.
And speaking of, Beijing has many parks, and speaking of the arrangement of urban landscape, I believe Beijing and Paris has one thing in common. Can you guess? No, we both have a central axis.
What is very interesting is that, in Beijing, maybe just like in Paris, you have this very, let's say vertical and straight way to organize the city. But at the same time, we have very complicated streets, narrow streets.
Alice.
When you get lost most of the time, you don't know the direction, and so you have both this idea of a clear order of the space, and at the same time, a sort of disorder when you easily get lost. I don't know if you have this experience.
That's the
Hutongs. In
great
Beijing, there are many hutongs
That's
like
the
this.
fridge. No, you never get lost in Beijing Hutong because it's the Dongxi Nanbei.
I got lost in Beijing.
Really?
I'm sorry because
I got lost in Paris. But,
but in my I always choose to live in Hutong, but in my small Hutong, I often get lost. It's like labyrinthic.
But I thought it's getting lost. It's one of the, specifically speaking, of French spirit, because it's knowing always where you go is boring. It's just getting lost. Getting lost and be happy. It's very French.
I think, getting lost is a key point for embracing culture.
Wow.
So the magic of traveling is the unpredictable surprises that happen along the way.
I'll say of getting lost also. Last year, my wife and our 2 children were in Paris, and I wasn't able to join them at that time. They got on the subway. My daughter, who's 12, didn't make it. Door shuts, so they're going down. In Paris. We lost my daughter in Paris, okay? And what happened? A very nice woman came up, she saw what had happened, she sat with my daughter and just waited to make sure she was safe until my wife and son were able to, get on the next train, come back to the station. So it was a very kind of heartwarming moment. We've had many moments like that in China too.
So moved to hear this.
Yeah, it was very moving for us. It's something I think we'll never forget, to a great extent. And we've had many moments like that in China also.
Yeah, both Chinese people and French people are very hospitable.
Very.
No matter to foreigners, to local people, that's another thing we have in common in terms of our national character. And Eric, you have traveled to many places here in China. How many of them?
I've been to every province. Many years ago, it averaged 8 per province. Countless cities and towns and villages, especially the countryside sort of thing. And I've only had the opportunity to go to France twice so far.
So if you could recommend one place to visit in China, where would that be?
If somebody doesn't get altitude sickness, I would definitely recommend going to the Qinghai Tibet Plateau. It's just absolutely beautiful scenery, and the culture and food also are just, they're really, really wonderful. The wildlife, these sorts of things. That would be the place that I'd say I have a personal connection with to a great extent.
Christine, how about you?
I would go to Xi'an.
The terracotta warriors. So what's
Uh,
special
not
about
only,
Xi'an?
not only for the terracotta warriors, for the atmosphere of the city. And especially now, Xi'an has become such dynamic and lively city that I think it's also represents something very meaningful for China. That both to combine the traditional or the long history heritage and the possibility for young people also to have such sharing energy. I think it's a very dynamic city. I love this combination.
So it's both ancient, historical, and also has a modern twist. Just now you listed 3 of your favorite Chinese food dishes. Okay, so what about French dishes? Could you name 3?
Les escargots.
Les escargots.
海鲜.
海鲜.
Seafood.
Seafood. 蜗牛，什么来着？ 一个
Quiche Lorraine.
quiche Lorraine.
How about you, Christine? What is your favorite Chinese and French dishes?
咕咾肉。
咕咾肉、宫保鸡丁、饺子、锅贴。
锅贴, 锅贴, 饺子 and 锅贴。
是的。In my own country, I would say chocolate cake made by my husband.
Oh, that's sweet.
I would say wine, definitely French wine, of course. And I would say quiche Lorraine.
We just talked about food, and Chinese and French food are among the most famous cuisines around the world. Why do you think that is? What does it say about our national characters or our cultural values that we both place so much emphasis on food?
I'm not a historian. I'm not
No,
scientifically. I just think we are the two cultural people who spend the most time on table. Simple like that.
Yes, I think it's also about long history, civilization, because gastronomy has a long history
Yeah.
in China and in France. And one thing is that we are two huge civilizations which have this language in common. This is how to share quality moments with food. And because also sharing moments with food, thanks to food or thanks to wine, is also a way for sharing other topics. We love, sharing ideas, dreams, emotions about life. And this is, if you never get time to sit down and to have the possibility to enjoy moments, well, you don't have this pleasure. So I'd say it's about, something linked with time.
I have to say that before I came to China, like many Americans, I thought of eating as almost a chore, something just to get over with so I can go through my day. And actually, I would do a lot of my meals while driving to work. I'd eat and drive. It was only after I came to China that I learned to sit down, to savor meals.
Really?
Yes, very much so, very much so. And then, when we did visit France, for instance, we carved out a few hours for each meal, again, to sit down, to truly savor it. Now, this is something, again, I've learned to do, after coming.
And in both China and France, like meals are regarded as a kind of social events that can bond people, bond family and communities, right?
Well, as musician, artist, I would say, yes, really, the French people, they can stay on the table and even forget they have a concert after.
So you have experienced that people, French people forgot to go to your concert?
No, not in my concert, in their concert, in any concert, but just stay on table. And the German is just...
They're very punctual, right? They're on time. They're very. They care so much about punctuality. Christine, I heard that you have lived in Beijing for such a long time, and you have grown very fond of Chinese tea. Is that true?
Yes, I'm fond of Chinese tea. Before I came to China, I never drank Chinese tea. So it's very thanks to China, I really learned how to appreciate tea, and especially Chinese tea, especially oolong tea, oolong cha. And this is why also, I chose to set up a very interesting exhibition about 10 years ago about tea and wine, a dialogue between Chinese tea and French wine, because there are many similar approaches. You take time, you discover a lot of things through a tea, like through music or like through paintings, It's a never-ending process to study, to know more, to have more images in your mind. So for me, it's a very, very sophisticated way to enjoy life.
Yeah, let's talk about music for a moment. Now, You've obviously existed in these kind of worlds between China and France, musically especially. You even said earlier that when you travel a lot of times, your travel is really just about the music. That's the main thing. How would you then describe the ways in which you think Chinese and French music have come to influence each other?
Well, I will tell you something, not because we have a distinguished French friend here. I'm always telling the same thing. I think the French have composed the most beautiful Asian music ever. Why I say that? Because 100 years ago, like the French painting, there's a lot of influence coming from Orient, Chinese, Japanese, and everywhere. And in the painting, you see a lot of Asian cultural influence, huge. And it's the same in music. In music of Ravel, Debussy, and especially these two guys. 40 years, because I was the first Chinese, went to France studying classical music. At that time, nobody has almost ever heard French music. We hear a lot of Russian music.
Yes.
And when I was there, I listened to the sonata of Debussy, for example. I was shocked. I say, I can't say that in English because my English is so limited. I'm sorry. 我必须要中文讲。我第一次听 Debussy 的音乐，我说这怎么有山西民歌啊？那怎么有三弦啊？ No. Music has also pictures, invisible pictures, and also music has tastes. It tastes differently. Music from anywhere, from somewhere. Yeah, that's French music.
So almost like a synesthetic thing where it paints pictures in your head, like your mind's, we were talking about like, your mind's eye, but
we could have everyone some other pictures individually, totally independent, free, but still we have a picture.
You wouldn't hear many Chinese composers, classical composers' pieces being played, around the world, but that's really seemed to have changed in the last several years in particular. And would you say, have you seen this really in France? And if so, what's this kind of look like, I should say, sound like in France these days?
You mean Chinese modern composed music in France?
Yes. People like Tan Dun, you know what I mean, has become internationally well known.
Oh, yeah. Can I say that? Tan Dun is a very old friend of mine. Tan Dun's music is, of course, he's Chinese. What he composed, we can call that Chinese music. But I personally, I would say it's Tan Dun's music.
So it has his characteristics.
Totally, yeah. He has found his very own musical language. Yeah, his music will stay because the difference, speaking from culture.
And again, I mean, we kind of talked a little bit about this, but it has become almost like a cliche of sorts to say, art, literature, music. They're these universal languages that go beyond boundaries, that cross cultures, but it's become a cliche, arguably for good reason, because it's really true. It's very true. How have you seen this take place in your own experiences of kind of, engaging these spaces between China and France?
For me, the cultural experience and cross-cultural experience started with curiosity and capability to learn. And again, it's all about time. When I came to China, I didn't know anything about Chinese culture. But my choice has been to dedicate time and deep time to learn about some, Chinese spirituality, Chinese literature, Chinese music, to go to take this time to study. So about boundaries, this is the fact that if you are crossing over those boundaries, there are no more boundaries anymore. But it is a process. It's not immediately, okay, there are a lot of differences between us. The idea, and what is very meaningful for me from a philosophical point of view, is to get in this process, to not to avoid those differences and those boundaries, but to go beyond. But it's not that easy, you know. You need time. You need a strong will, and you need to feel confident about your own culture to be able to go beyond your own culture. That's also a self-confident attitude, you know.
I think you made a very good point that we should firstly be, we must be very confident about our own cultural identity before we cross the borders to learn about other cultures.
You talk about French music. You know, in French music, in Debussy, Ravel, there's something so French that it's very difficult to explain why. But the beauty is that you can share this uniqueness with other people. This is a key, sharing.
Sharing, yes.
The other day I played a recital in the French embassy, the consulate, general consulate in Shanghai, and I played a lot of French pieces. And there was habanera, Spanish dance, there danse Sicilian, Sicilian dance, the Italian dance, Sicilia, and there's Ravel and Spanish and the flamenco, and I was joking, but seriously joking. I said that's also very French. They wrote a lot of things from Spain, from Italy, from China, from Japan, from and they say it's French.
Funny.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a great sign of self-confidence.
Yes, yes, and also
was
about inclusiveness, right? Yes, that's also one of the characteristics of Chinese culture. It's very resilient and inclusive, and it absorbs good elements from other cultures. Christine, you have worked with and hosted many cross-cultural exhibitions. So in the art space and beyond, would you say that Chinese people and French people have become closer and more engaged over time?
I would say that maybe for nearly 20, 30 years, there are more and more connections between Chinese artists and French artists, inviting Chinese artists to come to France. And for example, I had a dream when I came to China. And this dream became reality in Beijing. And this dream was, to establish a house for artists and to invite young French artists to come to China and to stay in China, not for tourism, to stay for 2-3 months, experiment China from inside, not from what you see, with the media and no, to experiment China. And what I experienced by myself is that all those young French artists coming to China, they become more in a very soft way, influenced by Chinese culture. And they become friends with Chinese artists. And when those young Chinese artists come to Paris, they spend a very beautiful moments together, and they can set up new projects.
So you give them like a platform.
It's more than a platform, it's a home.
So it's people-to-people exchanges in the,
it's the more familiar and emotional way.
Well, that's the from culture to culture meaning. That's from people to people.
From people to people, from heart to heart. In what ways has your experience here in China shaped your perspectives on life?
I had an incredible experience living in China, and this can be summarized about one single topic, which is time. And I wrote a book about this time, let's say my Chinese time experience.
You wrote a book about it.
I wrote a book. This book has been translated into Mandarin, and the title is 时间里的中国人.
时间里的中国人.
And because you know, I don't know you, but when I arrived in China, this is a book. It's a Salian edition.
时间里的中国人. Chinese people in China.
对，时间里的中国人. And in French, it's pourquoi les Chinois ont-ils le temps? Why do the Chinese have time?
Why? So,
Why?
As a Chinese, I'm also very curious.
Yes, because my experience is very, very clear. It's Chinese people, they are very rapid. And if you want to meet someone, I call you, I meet you tomorrow. And at the same time, they are very slow to make decisions. Sometimes you don't understand. You have to take this time, like a tea. You have to infuse a lot of your time and to wait and to wait. There's very quick situation and very rapid situation. And it's also, the symbol of huge civilizations, that Chinese have a very specific relationship with time, much more flexible. Now, I'm used to this, very, very flexible way of dealing with time.
I once heard a TED talk, and the speaker said, time management is about prioritizing things. You put the most important things first. So yeah, maybe that's another way of looking at it.
Yes.
Christine, I heard that you also read about Lao Tzu. Is that true?
In south of France, in my home, in my house, there is nothing. It's a very empty space. There are two books. One is the Bible. The other one is a book by Lao Tzu.
道德经.
道德经.
The English version, the French version of Dao.
French and Chinese version both.
So his beliefs are about like non-interference, non-action, that we have a force, a natural force that will guide the universe.
So it helps me a lot to think a little bit differently and to make me more peaceful and maybe more confident about time.
What you just said is very, very important. Not which culture has priority, what civilization is right and the other is wrong. It's just have the ability to think differently.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very well said.
So, here we're talking a lot about time. One thing I think everybody can agree, though, time brings change to a great extent. Now, how then do you guys, because you guys both working in these cultural spheres, think that we can preserve culture through time? We have these traditional cultures, but at the same time, we are undergoing massive transformations on global scales. We have globalization, we have these big paradigm shifts of technology like AI. So in this kind of a context, as time passes, how can we keep these old traditions? What can we do currently then to ensure that they survive to the future?
For me personally, I'm sure that the real power is spiritual power. So it means cultural, poetry, music, literature, so on. This is a real power.
It's more powerful
this
than
is what,
technology.
This is, you go to Paris, you go to China, where do you go? Are you checking your computer, your screen? You go to Forbidden City, you go to Notre Dame, you go to church, this is a real power. This is a real influential power.
That's what matters.
Technology is a key issue, and I'm glad we could have further and furthermore, new technology process. But it still needs to remain a tool.
To serve people. Yeah. So it can be harnessed and controlled by people to help people. For example, AI can help digitalize the data of cultural heritage sites, so it can be better preserved. So it can help people.
It already helped a lot of people. In Paris with Notre Dame, we are now, It has been a disaster. It's like 5 years ago, where we're totally burning our Notre Dame. But you know, we could have been able to say, okay, we are going to use some technology. But what did we do? We were looking for masters, artisans, art craft, men and women to go, because they have this know-how, as you have. And this cannot be easily replaced by AI or this
Never.
kind of...
Never.
Please, never.
Which book or movie do you think can best represent the ethos and or the aesthetics of China and France respectively? Book or movie, anything? In your eyes?
I'm not a good book reader at all, but the only, I assure you, the only books I ever read in my life was the Jules Verne
啊oui.
那个就是凡尔纳的三部曲。
I used to read Mo Yan.
莫言 which one?
J'ai les titres en I only have the...
In French.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So we're lost here. I don't know which
Yes,
book.
I
But
will
you
tell
find
you.
him a very good writer.
Yes, I think, yeah. For me, it helped me also a lot to have better understanding of Chinese society and Chinese interaction
How
in a
about
very
movies?
funny way. And,
How about movies?
about movies, you know, when I was young, and it was, I think, a Hong Kong movie. It was the title. It's In the Mood for Love. You've just seen this
In the
beautiful...
Mood for Love.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful name.
Yes, and I loved this movie very much because it was like a man and a woman facing with each other, and they never talk. They just say 2 words, 3 words in a very, you know, very, very subtle way. Two Chinese people, and it was a way of seducing each other without saying anything.
Oh, that's a good relationship.
That's you know, very different, because we French, we like to talk. I want to seduce you, so I need to say very, you know, specific compliments and to charm you, to seduce you through language. And those two people, man and woman, they are like sitting in a very quiet way, looking like this, drinking tea. That's it. But through some tiny details, you could feel that something was happening.
Something was going on.
Yes, but you know, for French it was a very different experience, and I learned a lot through this movie.
So the trick of a romantic relationship is to speak as little as possible.
I don't know.
You know, I haven't really seen many movies at all. Not much of a movie guy. But in terms of books, for Chinese books, I really liked Liu Cixin's The Wandering Earth.
Oh,
And not
science
just,
fiction.
Yes, yes. Well, that's what's interesting about it. It's a science fiction. These short stories, several of them, not just The Wandering Earth, that envision a kind of shared humanity of a technologically different future, but told in a Chinese way. At the same time, there's a good reason, I think, that COD, The Journey to the West, is a classic. Because what it does is it's a Chinese telling of a universal story, the kind of Jungian hero's journey archetype, where you have somebody, it's like the, Lord of the Rings, similar idea. You have somebody who leaves their safe home. They go out on a great adventure, they face challenges and hardship, and they bring back some benefit for the greater community and for their home. So I think that these two really, one is looking very much at the past and the future, but both are kind of these universal stories told with a Chinese flavor, and that's what I like about both.
I want to throw a very tricky question. Now, I want to ask you three guys, what do you make of the two concepts, culture and civilization? What do you think is the difference between culture and civilization, and the connection between the two words?
I would say maybe technical question, because for me, civilization, it's not only one culture, one country. You have, let's say, Western civilization, you have many different cultures. Italy culture, French culture, the German culture is different, is unique. But of course, those common points can shape what we call Western civilization. What is culture? For me, culture is memory. You remember, all the works, art works of the past, like Debussy, like 100 years ago, 200, 1,000 years ago, and it still remains a very current, dynamic, and modern thing. So it's about past and present. It's also kind of memories which shape the way we are looking at the world. And civilization, it's this huge, whole comprehensive way of gathering cultures. Yes. I would say that. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's just...
Civilization is like a broader framework, and culture is more specific.
Would you say it's almost like a mosaic, and then each culture is a different part of that mosaic, but it creates the bigger... I really like that. I just think that hits on very well. Sometimes I'm still trying to formulate this, but perhaps civilization could almost be thought of in a way that's more like an abstract, almost Platonic form ideal. And cultures, which would fit in those civilizations, are more like the practical, actual real life manifestations, the corporeal manifestations of this ideal. And again, many cultures sharing, sometimes one ideal with the civilization. I really like that point. So, Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for people from China and the rest of the world to engage in greater communication and exchanges. Now, what do you guys think then are the prospects for this in the future, generally speaking, but also then in particular between China and France?
The first instinct should be listening. Maybe I first or you first, but someone should stay first listening. Not two people feel the need, le besoin, to be better understanding to each other and both speak together at the same time.
So we have to listen first.
And as musician, I have the huge privilege because music is not an art of speaking. Music is art of listening. So later, I will do my job, my duty, and put myself first in a position of listening first. That's what I understand from better communicating.
I share exactly the same vision that we can talk about very big concepts and direction, but in fact, we need to listen to each other. And how do we listen to each other? Again, we need to go and to discover what does it mean Chinese culture, what does it mean French to live in France.
So what you're saying basically is we need to really have real people listen to real people.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to experience and engage with another culture directly, right? To see it in our own eyes.
I think this is the reason why you invited both of us.
Yes.
Because we are not just traveling, he speaks French as a French. I speak Mandarin. We know both. What does it mean? The difficulties, the beauties, the realities of both countries, France and China. And in that way, we are hopefully avoiding a lot of prejudice and misunderstandings.
Yes, okay, that's very beautifully said. I think it's time we wrapped up our conversation. Thank you so much for
谢谢. Thank you.
for joining us.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very insightful and yes, very helpful. I'm sure Erik and I have learned a lot from our conversation today.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of things to think about.
Thank you to the team.
Thank you. Okay, it's time for you to play the cello.
I will play for you the prelude from the second suite for cello solo from the great German composer Johann Sebastian Bach. I observe many Western friends who admire our great Chinese culture, like, for example, calligraphy. So we don't understand necessarily each word the maestro is just written, but we feel the rhythm and the breath and all the feeling, and just like music. And please understand, try to understand, that's invisible calligraphy.